Why do so many musicians become addicted to drugs or have serious mental problems? Hear the title: Lane Staley of Alice in Chains, Kurt Cobain, Jimi Hendrix, Chris Cornell, Demi Lovato, Britney Spears, Juice WRLD, and all the grunge music of 90s was inspired by heroin. The music of the late 60s to the early 70s was inspired by LSD, and today's rap lyrics contain Xanax, weed, and promethazine. The music industry creates a perfect storm for substance abuse. Young musicians often become famous and wealthy before they are mature enough to handle fame responsibly. Surrounded by nightlife, partying, and people who are drunk or high, they are immersed in an environment where abstinence is neither valued nor encouraged. With money comes access to drug dealers, which is focused on rich and influential artists because they can afford to buy regularly and being close to them grants social advantages. On top of that, musicians are not required to maintain peak physical health to perform, unlike athletes or dancers, so drug use does not immediately threaten their careers. Pressure to appear fearless, rebellious, and cool also pushes many into experimentation, especially their circle of friends already uses drugs. Touring life raises some problems. Constant travel, lack of stability, and loneliness make drugs a coping mechanism rather than just a party accessory. There is also a culture of too much freedom. Talented musicians are often protected by consequences because they are seen as irreplaceable. Strong example is Dave Mustaine's early years with Metallica. Despite his skill as a guitarist, his escalating alcohol and drug problems led to conflicts, irresponsibility, and erratic behavior. Eventually, even a band as chaotic and young as Metallica reached a point where his action could no longer be tolerated, and he was fired. It shows that the talent can delay consequences, but it cannot eliminate them entirely. Altogether, fame, youth, wealth, peer pressure, permissive environment, instability create conditions in which drug use becomes not only accessible but normalized within the world of music. Before we can find out why musicians seem to use drugs more, we need to ask most basic question: why do people use drugs at all? Drugs contain chemicals that tap into the brain's communication system and disrupt the way nerve cells normally send, receive, and process information. The result is a brain aversion dopamine, activating reward system which normally responds to natural behaviors linked to survival, eating, spending time with loved ones, etc. that produce euphoric effects in response to psychiatric drugs. Kurt Cobain. Kurt Cobain started drugs like many users, with marijuana. After his parents divorced, his father kicked him from the house, and he started to live with his mom. Ninth grade, he started doing pot to distract from his problems. In Bleach era, he started doing more heavy stuff. Heroin. First time he told his addiction to his friend and bandmate Chris Novoselic, Chris was told him you are playing with dynamite. Kurt Cobain's relationship with Courtney Love was not healthy too. Cobain and Love got married just months after they started dating. They got married in Hawaii in 1992. Although Courtney and Kurt certainly loved each other, or perhaps just didn't have time to stop loving. So fleeting this story was, either way this was not easy for them both. Kurt constantly suffered from heavy depressions. They both were on drugs. They decided to get married only when they found out Love's pregnancy. Love confessed to Vanity Fair at 1992. We did a lot of drugs. We got pills and then we went down to Alphabet City. Kurt wore a hat, and I wore a hat. We chopped some dope, then we got high and went to SNL. After that, I did heroin for a couple months. Even end of his life, toxicological test shows that the level of heroin in Cobain's bloodstream was 1.52 milligrams per liter. Kurt Cobain on drug use. I really don't care what anyone thinks about my past drug use. I could blame it on rock and roll lifestyle or the influence of people like Kate Richards or Iggy Pop and all the others who use drugs. But the truth is, I saw it as something people just did to relieve pain. Even before I just started heroin, I knew it would eventually become boring, just like marijuana. All the drugs become dull after a while. After a few months, they are as ordinary as breathing air. I have always lied about it, because I never wanted to influence anyone or make them consider trying drugs. It's stupid. I never wanted to be the reason someone thought it was cool or worth trying. Kurt Cobain in 1993 interview with M6 Lawrence Romance. Jimi Hendrix was the most gifted instrumentalist of all time, and then revolutionized the late 60s psychedelic rock movement. The Seattle-born musician, same as Kurt Cobain, Jimi Hendrix's drug use was a documented part of his life and culture surrounding him. He acknowledged using substances such as cannabis and LSD, and there are widely repeated claims, especially in biographies and recollections, that he sometimes placed LSD under his headband during performances. Regardless of whether every detail of these stories can be fully verified, they reflect a strong association between Hendrix's psychedelic scene of the late 60s. In 1969, he was arrested in Toronto for possession of heroin and hashish, a legal case that became a well-known moment in his career. At various points, Hendrix admitted to using drugs like cannabis and LSD, and many sources assess that his involvement with other substances, including cocaine, was part of his lifestyle during this period. Official reports determined that he was under the influence of barbiturates when he died of asphyxia. While drugs certainly present in Hendrix's personal and musical environment, his legacy cannot be reduced to substance use. Lane Staley was one of the most talented singers and performers of ever to grace the arts. Throughout work with Alice in Chains, Staley captivated listeners around the world. In the 90s, Lane Staley quickly rose to fame as the frontman of the Seattle band Alice in Chains, but cracks gradually began to form in the group, due in large part to Staley's drug addiction. I know I'm near to death. I did crack and heroin for years. I never wanted to end my life in this way. I know I have no chance. It's too late. The singer was in and out rehab for years, often showing up to band practice high and reportedly living on a diet of heroin, cocaine, and meal of supplement ensure. His drug addiction became so severe that he slowly lost his contact with his bandmates, friends, and family members. He barely left his apartment. Tragically, he became so reclusive that by the time he died of an overdose in April 2002, it took 2 weeks for anyone to find his body. At the end of the day, it wasn't just fame or pressure or the spotlight that pushed rock stars toward drugs. It was a perfect storm: youth, excess, pain, escape, and a culture that celebrated self-destruction. Some survived it, some don't. And while the music they created will echo for generations, the lives lost remind us that talent doesn't make you invisible, and success doesn't make you happy. Thanks for watching.